welcome to my talk about regulated workloads and compliance and security with AWS. My name is Andreas Schranzhofer, and I'm the CTO of a fintech startup called Scalable Capital in Munich, and I'm going to give you a bit of our experiences when achieving regulation and authorization by the corresponding authorities. A bit of an overview. First of all, I would like to introduce Scalable Capital and what we do to give you some context about what regulation in our context means and how it affected requirements analysis when coming up with our system architecture. And then I will go on and tell you a bit about the options that we faced as a result of that process. And yeah, give you the conclusions on what we achieved and what we did. And if there's some time for questions and answers, or afterwards, you can also catch me and we can discuss certain issues. Well, what's Scalable Capital? Scalable Capital is Europe's fastest growing digital wealth manager. We are an authorized financial institution in Germany and in the United Kingdom. That means we got authorized independently by the BaFin, and by the FCA in the United Kingdom. The company was started in 2014, and now it's operating its business in Germany and in the UK. We have offices in Munich and in London. We do our product and then our engineering in Munich. Our go live as a product for clients was in January 2016 in Germany and in August 2016 in the UK. In the meantime, we managed 230 million euros in assets, and from day one, we are 100% cloud-based. Now, what do we do if you become a client of Scalable Capital? What does that mean? Well, we do wealth management for you. You give us our money, and we manage it accordingly. And what do? We create an ETF, a globally diversified ETF portfolio, and one of the parameters, one of the metrics when you become a client is your risk exposure. And we determine that together with you through a number of questions regarding your financial situation, your goals with that investment, and your knowledge in the capital markets. And that risk matrix is part of our contract. And then we go on and manage, first create your portfolio accordingly, and then analyze and monitor your portfolio on a daily basis. And if the risk matrix of that portfolio would move from our agreed target, we would rebalance your portfolio accordingly to constantly, over time, meet your risk target. That means we keep your risk exposure constant, not your weights, not your asset allocation. That one is dynamic and changes over time. So how can you become a client? You need at least 10,000 euro. That's our minimum investment, and for that, we take a fee of 0.75% per year, and that includes everything. That's trading and everything. From day one, we insisted on having a totally digital experience. That means no paper, no wet signature, no printing of something. You can go in the app, you download the app, become a client in our native app, do video identification, and you're a client in 20 minutes. Now, what does regulation in that context mean? Well, I told you, we take over your investment portfolio. We trade for you, we monitor it. And in order to be able to do that, you need to be authorized by the authorities. We are trading in the client's name, so it is essential. And actually, we think that is a good thing. So if you are regulated, it's a good sign to your clients that you are a trustworthy company, that you satisfy the corresponding processes and measures. It is necessary for our business model, as mentioned, and it increases the transparency towards our clients. Now, regulation in Germany, in particular, means you apply for the authorization, and then you have to adhere to certain measures, to certain processes. And those are laid down in a number of documents. And most importantly, one is called Mindestanforderungen an das Risikomanagement, or in short, MA-Risk. And there are other documents that contain a number of regulations, not only for your IT system, but for a number of processes and the qualification of your employees and how you handle business in general. Of course, in this talk, I will mostly focus on the IT part, since this is what we are all here for. So when you start that business and you read all those documents and you kind of try to carve out what are the essentials, what does it really mean as a to-do, then you come up with a number of keywords: security, disaster recovery, data privacy, permission vetting, business contingency plans, data integrity, stuff like that. And there are all those things you have to take care. But as a startup, you usually don't start there. You start more like, what do I want to build? What is my business model? What is my product? And that has a total different set of requirements. And I think they're also important to mention them here. So as I mentioned, we are operating in Germany and in the UK, and that is our core strategy in the company. We want to become Europe's biggest digital wealth manager. And for that, you need to support multi-country, multi-currency, and multi-custodian bank setups, multi-language environments. You have to integrate with a number of third-party sources. Another requirement that directly results from our business model is an incredible computational load. As I mentioned, we are monitoring every single client portfolio and make sure the risk metric is being met. That means we have to analyze thousands of portfolios every single day. Of course, we didn't start with thousands, but that's where we want to go, and this is what our system has to support eventually. And of course, we see ourselves as a technology company, as an engineering organization, and we strive to hire the best engineers that are available, and they want flexibility on the stack. They want clean engineering, software engineering processes and methodologies. So we need flexibility on that, and we also need that to be resource efficient, and that's not only cost efficient. So out of that, we came up with a corresponding big picture system overview. We have a number of microservices. They are independent actors with well-defined contracts. I think everybody has a clear understanding on what I mean by that. We have a very sophisticated abstraction layer, data abstraction layer, in order to be able to integrate different banks, different currencies, different types of transactions. We are in the cloud, that was clear in the beginning, and we have a fully automated delivery. That means continuous integration, continuous deployment. As mentioned, flexibility on the engineering processes was very important for us from day one. Now you can already see here on the very bottom this custodian API, and that was the first thing that we had to build. We have a partner bank in Germany, we have a partner bank in the United Kingdom. We want to achieve the same goal, but in the end they communicate with different protocols. They have a different set of data, transactions are modeled slightly differently. So we had to kind of abstract that part out of the system. And that made basically the following system architecture with a custodian-dependent part. That's the partner bank we are working with. A custodian-independent part, so that's our own core of the product. And then on the bottom, we have what we call the cross-robo services. That's something that's totally agnostic to the actual implementation for custodian, but also for the product itself. These are our compute cluster, our number crunchers. These are the shared services across the organization. For example, the continuous integration system, the test system, data storage for certain files, or business intelligence services and stuff like that. And as you can see on that picture with those slightly doubled boxes, scalability is very important here, especially in our internal system where we optimize or want to optimize all those portfolios, and where we, depending on our success, of course, have to consume lots of data. And we need to be able to scale here. And therefore, we have stateless microservices. We can clone them as much as we want. They consume messages from queues, and we can achieve that goal. So that's what we want to build. And however we do it, it has to support this. Now let's come back to the regulatory requirements. Now we know what we have to build from an architectural point of view, how the systems interact with each other, what's the data flow. Now we put security on top of that, or regulation on top of that. That means security, business continuity, disaster recovery, and data privacies. And those are the 4 issues that I would go a bit into detail, because I can talk about the others for too long, and it doesn't really make sense. So security, what does it mean? It's not like there's a switch somewhere and you can turn on security. So this is very important to understand, and I think the most important sentence on that slide is the bottom line. Security is not a feature. Security is a process, and it's throughout your organization, and infrastructure is only one part of it. If you got the infrastructure wrong, that's bad. But if you have the best secure architecture and you have your flawed process, it doesn't help you. So security is a process, and you have to execute it in every single stage of your system setup. But let's go back to the infrastructure. What do we want to achieve in that context? Data integrity, availability, authenticity, and confidentiality. This is how it is defined in MR-Risk 87.2. Now, what do you do with that? You need to use established standards. Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't write your own authentication service, your own encryption and decryption. Use standard services that you can update, where security vulnerabilities are updated regularly and you can react. You have to regularly test your system. Do penetration testing and application testing, static code analysis. You have to train your staff, of course, your engineering, but also other people in the organization that interact with the system. Very important, permission vetting. Not everyone should be root. I think that is kind of a very basic statement, but it's not always very clear. But it's much more than that. You need to have a very fine, granular overview who is allowed to do what and when. And in fact, you should be able to audit that. You should know who did what. But of course, as I mentioned before, there are many more issues like software and change management process, the operations, how your customer support organization works. And these are also part of the regulation, in fact. Another part that's in MR-Risk is disaster recovery and business continuity. Actually, you have to have a contingency plan. You have to be able to say, in case of an emergency, how long is your system offline? How long does it take for an emergency system to come online? And what's your process to basically, from there, go back to a regular operation? Defined in number 7.3 here, for example. So these are measures and tests that you have to document, and processes that you have to document, but also that you have to prove, and you have to test them and see whether those times are actually satisfied when you write them down. You need to have a document where it clearly describes whom do you call and how do you reach that person, what's the phone number. Again, this part has to be regularly tested and refined as you scale. And final, last but not least, data privacy and locality. We are a financial institution. We store lots of personal data. In fact, we are obligated to. We need to know who is our customer. KYC, know your client, is actually a requirement. So we store all that personal data, and that's highly sensitive data. It's financial data. It's how much you earn, because that's part of our risk assessment questionnaire. But also all the transactions that happened in your name, on your portfolio. And we require these for regulation, but also for our business operations. And there are different privacy laws and different restrictions, and they also change. Safe Harbor, for example, was cancelled by by a court ruling of the European Union. Now it's replaced with Privacy Shield. But there's that's always evolving and changing landscape here. And you also have to have in your data centers, wherever you have them, access right for the authorities in case of an investigation. So there are many more things, and many of those things we didn't know back in 2014. So reading all through those documents and having all the discussions with the responsible people in the corresponding administrational bodies is a process. It's not like, here is your to-do list with 5 points, do it and you're good to go. It's a process, and it depends very much on your business. So what we did know is that we will not know stuff from the beginning. So whatever we come up, wherever we start building our system, it needs to be able to evolve in terms of performance, scalability. That's what we know. Computation, servers, computational load, storage. But it also needs to be able to satisfy upcoming regulation, new data privacy legislation, stuff like that. We need to be able to have full flexibility on our system. Now, you have 3 options in the end. Either do it yourself, don't do it yourself, so that's number 1, outsource to an agency or a provider, or somehow find a mixture between those things, however that looks like. So number 1, outsourcing, don't do it yourself, was not an option for us. It's not compatible with the company strategy, basically. We want to be the owner of our technology. We want to scale throughout different countries, be a platform partner with different actors in the market, and it's important that we own our technology stack. You can build it on your own, start with a data center, host your own infrastructure, build processes and interfaces that allows you to satisfy all the disaster recovery, business continuity systems, put load balancers there, configure service discovery instances, and all those things. And we were in a situation where we started with 2 countries, and we were just a handful of people. So it would not have been possible for us to build a system on our own that actually satisfies the regulation, is convenient to use, and is scalable enough to support our business. So we have to somehow mix it. So option 3, nothing else is left. So let's mix it. And that's where cloud providers come into the game. What does it mean, the cloud? Cloud means there's this saying, there's no cloud, it's just servers you don't own, right? So you rent infrastructure and deploy your applications there. And that's what we do with AWS, with Amazon Web Services. We actually rent infrastructure, but also services there. We do have the capability to really go into the dedicated instances and do everything on our own if we want. But we also have the comfort that if there is a service and the service happens to be useful and to do what we want, we can use that one, and that's less of an effort. And it allows us to build our application and not build a data center that might, at some point in time, support our application. So Amazon Web Services. Let's go through the requirements we came up before and see if all the checkboxes basically tick. So I mentioned system complexity with the different countries, different currencies, and all those things. Well, adding instances, services, nodes, and networks in Amazon is rather easy. In fact, you can deploy your infrastructure as code. What about the computational load? Managing thousands of portfolios, handling, hopefully at some point, millions of API requests, doing all that computational simulation and data analysis. Well, if we look at the Amazon infrastructure, at the computational resources Amazon can provide, from our perspective, I would argue that we have virtually infinite resources. So there's no way that we will ever be able to exhaust the Amazon system. Scalability to support our strategic goals, being the #1 digital wealth advisor wealth manager in Europe. While we have availability zones around the globe, around Europe, again, we have virtual infinite resources here to do that, and there's no limit in terms of infrastructure for our business here. And also the engineering organization. So we really have free reign on the Amazon platform. We have full control of the servers where we want full control of the servers. We have services that are available on Amazon Web Services that are in line with the processes we want to implement, the way we want to build software and maintain our system. Our engineers can focus on the application, and we can even have our infrastructure in our QA process. We have infrastructure as code, we can review it, we can do pull requests for infrastructure. Now, in terms of regulatory requirements, does it also match here? Well, in terms of security, we have up-to-date appliances at any point in time. We don't need to care about security updates of our Linux instances. We have web application firewalls. We have virtual private cloud. That's basically a network across multiple availability zones. So we can achieve disaster recovery with that while maintaining a secure, closed network. We have Cloud Trail, where we see what's happening and who did what on the system. And we have monitoring and a very clear way how systems can interact with the internet. We have, with IAM, Identity and Access Management, a very sophisticated way to do this permission vetting, where every employee who has access to the system has a very clearly defined set of permissions that they can do. And again, we have availability zones around the globe, and most importantly for us, we have the capability of hosting our German business, our German data here in Germany, in Frankfurt, and the UK business and data in Dublin. And we have multiple availability zones in those regions. I have 2 here, so that's slightly outdated, I suppose, today, right? So now we have 3 in Dublin and in Frankfurt, and that highly supports our business continuity and contingency requirements. Security. Amazon Web Services, they have all the certifications that you want. We use Docker images to deploy our software. We are regularly tested by external companies. And we have a very advanced and sophisticated way to define our network setup and rules. And that's just a bit of a glimpse on how that actually looks like. So we have access control, we have through gateways and bastion servers, we have minimal exposure, so the attack vector is reduced. We have a redundant setup with always at least 2 instances of any service running. We have multiple availability zone setups in all our regions. Again, outdated slide here, Frankfurt's now free. And we are protected against data loss with backup, with infrastructure as a code. We can easily spin up another instance of our setup. And we regularly assess that stuff. It's very important, so we, of course, do our best. But it is important to get external opinions, and for that, we are tested and penetration tested, app tested on a regular basis. We follow a secure software development process with code reviews, testing, pull requests. We check the state-of-the-art, like the OWASP top 10, for example, for our web applications every time. We build a secure organization because, as I mentioned, security is not a feature that we can buy. It's something that you have to live with employee education and access control on any system. And we're active in the community, for example, today, but also on other conferences where different people from the company are active, get feedback, and stay on top of their game. Well, putting all that stuff together, I would like to conclude my talk. Apparently, we are on Amazon Web Services, and that means we consider it a good fit to execute regulated workloads. We have regions worldwide, multiple availability zones, and standardized services that we can use out of the box. And this allows us to focus on our business and not be distracted by infrastructure. In fact, looking back, Amazon Web Services and the way it's set up and used and its pricing structure allowed us to build a regulated service in the first place. It would have been very prohibitive if we would have been forced to do all that stuff on our own, and we might not be where we are now. So, and there are new services all the time, and we just heard some of them today, and it's really awesome for us that we can take advantage of that and try to innovate and bring new products to our clients with those new services. So that's it from my point. Just get in touch. Thanks a lot.